Hi, this is Marcus Pulis, and this is Aquarian Anarchy. Before I get started, make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Go get you a t-shirt at the store. Links are below. Last week had a great show, and my friend Chad Lemoine joined me, and hopefully he will become a reoccurring guest. And we'll have him on here a lot because I really like the way the two of us kind of went through subjects. Might have got a little more in depth than I usually do. That's a good thing because Chad brings detail sometimes that I overlook, and I think that makes this broadcast a little bit better. And so, Chad, if you want to say hi real quick, then we'll go ahead and dive into this week's stories.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and I enjoyed it last week, and hopefully I can contribute in a positive way. But I'm really looking forward to hearing some of what you have to say this week, because I think there's some stuff that until I hear your story, I won't be able to really even to chime in or contribute on that. So I'm really excited to hear that.
Cool. Yeah, I will dive in. What I'm talking about is I participated in the Open It Up protest here. I live in Indiana, and I went to that amongst other things that I did in my activism last week, and I saw firsthand what these are all about. A little bit later in the broadcast, I want to get into what the news said about those protests and how their story is, no matter which one you're looking at, is a little bit different than mine. And but I guess to tell my story, I need to maybe start at the end. That may sound kind of a little counterintuitive, but you need to understand before I start telling this story, so I don't kind of have to call back to it, where I was at the end of Monday with the reactions that I heard from people. One of the things that I'm personally a part of is I not only attend, but I'm a member of a group here in Indiana. I'm not going to name them. But I'm going to keep them anonymous, but it's something that I've been a part of for going on 9 years at this point. Constantly going.
Pretty big deal to you too. It's a pretty big deal to you. Like,
correct.
It's not a small thing, people.
Right. Yeah. So this is a nature preserve that I've been involved with, and I like what they do because they grow their own food, they do workshops, you learn how to do this and that and the other thing, but they're also supposed to be spiritual people, and I consider myself a spiritual person. So at the end of the day, after this protest, that really all that they said really is, it is time to open it back up. Nobody made statements like that they should have never shut it down. Nobody said that you shouldn't be, taking precautions. Nobody said, well, there might have been some people that believed it was all a hoax, but it wasn't the focus of the event. That most of the people were just saying, all right, danger is past, let's open it back up so people can get back to work. I got a death threat from someone at that nature preserve who I have known for no less than 5 years. And we're not talking about somebody who I just kind of know. No, these are people that have sat at my tent, because you go camping and those kinds of things there. And I have sat and smoked a joint with right there, who we have had in-depth conversations. I was attacked by somebody who is in leadership of this group. Now, to his side, he just tried to correlate, knowing that I can't stand Donald Trump. I don't like anything that he does. But he tried to basically say I was just like a Trump supporter, and that this, if I'm not on his team, I must be on Trump's team. And now, to their credit, another friend of mine is a moderator in one of the groups that is involved in the group. Now, to be clear, this particular moderator lives in Chicago. The group itself, the nature preserve, is in southern Indiana. So this is somebody that's far off, but he is a moderator of the group. Right. He saw the threat on my life that they made publicly. And we got to understand, this isn't just a threat on my life. It's a threat on my 10-year-old little girl's life and my wife's life. Right. Okay? So put that into perspective. They are threatening to kill us because we have the audacity to come out and say, how about people get back to work? And so, but to my friend's benefit, he saw that and took it down. It did get taken down. And he then said, I had to take this down. I disagree with the person that was threatened, meaning me. But we shouldn't be threatening people's lives. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of says, or should we? Should we allow that to happen? Yeah. So the guy that is defending me is like, should we allow this? You know, and to be clear, the guy that took it down would say, no, we should not agree with this, but he is trying to say, this isn't just my group. Should we allow this? So that is the end of the story. The beginning of the story actually starts a very long time ago. I work for Donald Rainwater. Most of the people that are here also know that I work for Adam Kokesh. But here in Indiana, Donald Rainwater is running for governor against Holcomb, who is the current governor. And one of the things that Don is saying, and if you go look at the coverage that will be linked below, you can hear part of Don's speech that happened at the protest. But part of Don's thing has been, how can we, you let people go shop, you know, at Walmart or at Kroger, but not at Joann's.
Office Depot and PetSmart are still open.
Right.
Like, yeah. What are you going to PetSmart for?
Right. But what he kept saying, you know, what's the difference between going to Lowe's to get seeds,
right,
and going to Kroger to get groceries? What's the difference? There isn't one. Right. If there's really this big of a deal where we shouldn't be doing any of this stuff, we shouldn't be doing any of this stuff. Right. So anyhow, I know as the media guy for Don that he's going to be at this protest. Okay. So we start there. Now I was going to go whether he was going to go or not.
Yeah.
But those who know me know that I take my job whether paid or not. And let's be clear, I don't get paid by Don. Maybe someday, but not today. And I'm just volunteering, but I take my job very seriously and I try to do the best that I can. So as a media person for Don, I need to be at something that Don's at.
Right.
Don brought his lawyer just in case he got arrested.
Right.
So that's kind of the very beginning of how this starts. I want to jump ahead and give other details. And Chad, please, if you want to ask questions or something like that.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, what's interesting, what you said about, you know, what's open versus what's not open, kind of, it hits home with me because, so I live in Louisiana. I live in southeast Louisiana, not quite New Orleans. I live in Baton Rouge. So, you know, not all the way to New Orleans and almost to Mississippi, but pretty far east. I've got to drive 3 hours almost to get to Texas. Okay. So one of the plants that I travel to is in Texas. I've been going for almost a year and a half now over there, you know, on a regular basis. And in the last 2 months, you know, it's been cut back considerably. I used to spend a couple of nights in a hotel and, you know, those sorts of things. Well, now all I'm doing is I'm making a day trip. I drive from Baton Rouge over there. It's about a 3-hour drive, and I drive back. The entire trip from my house, stopping for gas along the way, and coming back, the closest I come to anyone who either I could infect or who could infect me is first the cops who stopped me at the border to check my papers. Second, the nurse when I get to the plant who, and I look, private property, if I want to go onto their property, I get it. They have certain requirements that they're like, hey, if you want to come on our site, you have to do these things. I may not necessarily think it's, uh, it's incredibly helpful. I mean, I get they don't know where I'm going and all that kind of stuff, but it's interesting to me. It's just interesting to me that the cop who stops me at the border gets about 2 feet from me to ask me for my stuff and to ask me where I'm going and all that stuff. And if it were just up to me and it was just me going somewhere, I'd probably start some shit. But I have an employer and I'm not trying to get them in all kind of crap and everything. I just want to go about my business. So I'm like, look, here's the letter they gave to me. Bye. Right. So they're like, okay, go ahead. Anyway, I get there. There's a. It's not even a nurse. It's just this lady who she gets a temperature gun. She points it at your forehead, checks to make sure you don't have fever, and then that's it. And she gets about a foot from me to do that because she's like. Apart from that, I don't come within 20 feet of anybody. I go check my equipment. I check to make sure everything's doing what it's doing. I go to my computer. No one else touches that computer except me once a week. And I mean, it was, every day of the week before this thing happened. But my whole point with that is that the closest I come to infecting someone else or myself being infected is the people whose only job is to try to stop that from happening. So
that's the efficiency.
I will allow you to proceed.
Right, that's the efficiency of government. Let's make the problem worse.
And I will say that this private facility that I'm going to, I guarantee you, there's some pressure. This is a major corporation. There's some pressure that they do all their, dotting I's and umlauts and crossing T's just to make sure. Yeah, you like that, right? Just to make sure that they don't get in trouble with Big Daddy. What's that?
Do they have a mustache?
Right. God damn, man, it's
rough.
Insane.
So that's kind of the very backstory. So the real story starts on Thursday. And why Thursday? And why Thursday is because my wife and I, unbeknownst to the majority of people out there, including the people at the nature preserve I talked about, they don't know that Amber and I volunteer like crazy to help people. It's part of what we do. It's part of our outreach. We've increased that since this COVID stuff. One of the things we volunteered to do is we work with a group called Hearts in Hand. And I've become friends with Bill Levin, who is the minister of the First Church of Cannabis in Indiana. We've become friends. He's associated with this homeless outreach, which does great work. I will put the link down below. They're great. Go check them out. Give to them. They're good people. So anyhow, but it's private. They have noticed that the homeless aren't getting as much stuff as they used to because the government is shut down and they're not helping. And a lot of the charities have shut down.
Yep.
So one of the things they've done is they used to go out once a week. Now they go out multiple times a week to try to help these people because right now they are really the only place these people can get any kind of help. So Amber and I took our own money because last week we went with them and went around and handed out food and did all that kind of stuff. Well, this past week, they had said it would be better because, we're just basically touring around with them. They can handle it themselves. They know what they're doing. They've done it a million times. We're willing to help, but we wanted to know how we could help better. And how they said we could help better is that they need peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for passing out to people for lunch on Sundays.
Okay.
And we said, great, we got that. So on Thursday, me and my wife and my little girl all sat down at our kitchen table and made 150 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. To be clear, that is between 4 and 5 peanut butter canisters and around 4 jelly canisters and 16 loaves of bread. So
Love it though, man. Good job. That's awesome.
yeah, well, I mean, that's what you can do. That's what I can do.
And if you think about it, it's like it's actually like a really it's a really efficient way to like help a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. And so we put all that together on Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
On Friday night, our local town has a food bank, and they took volunteers. Now, we only got one of the slots because everybody in town, being cool people that my little town is, volunteered like crazy. So they only needed like each volunteer gets a night, Right. So anyway, we did that on Friday night. So Saturday we get up and we get ready, and we go to this protest. So I get there, okay? We get there a little early. Chad, you know me pretty well, and you know that I'm almost always early. That's who I am. People talk about libertarians being late all the time, and that doesn't work for me because I like to be ready, and I don't like things happening at the last minute. So anyway, we get to this protest a little early. There's already people there, but not too many. So my wife and I go walking up. This guy comes and there's, American flags in different places, lots of Gadsden flags, lots of, people with handmade signs, largely saying, open it back up, something like that. Right. And lots of people in masks. And to be clear, like I said in last week's video, the reason that we wear masks isn't because we think that we're going to get infected or anything like that. We're in open air. It's a nice day out. We're not trying, and they say that heat will kill a lot of this stuff. And if you know anything about viruses, that's absolutely true. Vitamin D is good for keeping yourself healthy, which you get that from the sun, those kinds of things. So we're not really concerned about ourselves getting infected. We're worried that like maybe I did catch something and some old guy is freaked out and I breathe on him and suddenly he's got COVID and I didn't even know I had it. So I'm trying to be responsible and respectful for other people, right? In wearing that. One of the big questions we got was, why are you wearing a mask? Well, that's why. Because people are freaking the hell out and I don't want, I want to be helpful. I don't want to be hurtful. Right. So I'm respecting them and wearing a mask. Now, truthfully, I didn't wear my mask. My wife and my little girl did. I didn't because nobody else cared except one guy. And he was walking up and down this, and we'll get to him in a minute. He's walking up and down in between all these people screaming about Rush Limbaugh. One of my favorite things that happened is, right, scream, you came here because of Rush Limbaugh. And I'm like, anyway, so I'll go ahead and tell that story now. So I see my friend Mark Rutherford, who's one of the leaders here in Indiana of the Libertarian Party. And so I'm like, Mark, and I run over to say hi to him and what have you. Well, we had a little quick conversation. And anyway, this guy that had been walking amongst all these people, he's got masks on and he the Rush Limbaugh and all this other stuff, right? He comes up to us and he's like, are you with them? He's just seen me 13 seconds before this, walking down the road, has forgotten that he's already told me that I was just showing up because of Rush Limbaugh. But he comes up to Mark and I, and if you know who Mark Rutherford is, he's Don's lawyer, just to be clear, but he's a lawyer and he looks like a lawyer. He's in a suit at this protest. He's got cashmere, scarf on, looking very dapper.
Everything.
Yeah. So that's who Mark is. He's a really, really responsible, good guy. And he, I like Mark a lot. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this guy comes up and he's like, so are you guys with the protest or again? Because we're on the other side of the road now, which it basically spans both sides. So he says, are you guys with that or against it? And Mark's like, he just looks at the guy and goes, fuck you.
That's
did
epic.
not even, yeah, did not even skip a beat.
Who the fuck asked you anyway? Get the hell out of here. Like,
Fuck you. And so me, I'm like, we're libertarians, you know, like, and this guy's like, it was like we broke him. He was like, it was good.
well, that's what when you were saying earlier about how there's this thing that like you're either if you're there, you're a Trump supporter, but what's funny is like do you know how many people I have friends and family who are like big like Republican, conservative, Trump supporter? You know, that's where I came from, and you know how many of those people I've had sending me all this stuff like you have to watch this thing that Dr. Fauci said. You have to read this thing from Dr. Fauci and read this thing from Newt Gingrich. I'm like, I'm not reading some shit by Newt Gingrich. Fuck that dude. You know, like you know what I mean? But what's funny is like these are some of the people who have been like the most scared and the most. But as soon as the 3-phase plan came out, all of a sudden it's like, well, they're opening the country back up. So, and I'm like, well, have you been looking at these numbers that you've been all terrified about? Because they haven't changed all that much. Right. But now all of a sudden there's a 3-phase plan and everybody's happy.
At least it's not a 5-year plan, because then we'd all be there.
Who knows? It might be. There's no. They put. We got another $480 billion stimulus package approved today. So you know, we just the printer goes. Brrr.
Right. Yeah, I know. But so anyway, so this guy, we broke this guy. He has no idea how to handle us, and
people
Mark
can't comprehend that there's somebody who doesn't agree with them, but also doesn't agree with Trump.
Yes.
or with
he was completely confused. Right. He was completely confused. And Mark just looked at me and he goes, I don't even play with them anymore. And I was like,
don't even try that. It's
right.
that pearls before swine thing again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Last week. And I was like, well, I try to like explain because it's important to me that they know that I'm not some kind of, you know, fascist statist like they are.
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, I know. He said, but they never buy it anyway. And I was like, you know, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think for some of those people in a situation like that, in that kind of setting, it's almost like you have to just chalk it up to they need someone else closer to them to open another couple of doors for them before they can even see that what you have is a door that can be opened. Like they're not even they're in a fog. They don't even see it. So
it's like in the have you ever seen the movie about physics called What the Bleep Do We Know Anyway?
I never watched it. It was on Netflix, I think, for a while, and I kept seeing it come up and everything. And there were a bunch of other things that I was going through, and it never made like the list of. But I've always wanted to see that one. So anyway, enlighten me.
So in it talks about physics and about perception and things like that. Really good video. I suggested it. Doesn't actually have the whole lot to do with like freedom stuff. It has more to do with like perception and ideas and those kinds of things. But to your point, one of the things they talked about was that they've documented that when they believe that when Columbus was coming up to the beach and the island in the Caribbean, that the natives literally did not see the ships. They didn't see them. Like they because they was so outside of their understanding that their brain just went, nope, those don't exist. And what it took, they believe, was a shaman who had, you know, maybe he was on peyote, I don't know. But that shaman had to see the votes first and tell people about it so that they would see them. And I think that we see that kind of thing playing out in political discussion. And one of the things that I think may actually unravel a lot of the problems that we're seeing is a couple things. One, they're defeating themselves when they start talking about, will libertarians vote for Bernie? Now, I know Bernie's dropped out now, but I saw those articles because that works the opposite direction. When Bernie dropped out, there are going to be, I don't know how many, but there are going to be a few of those people that go libertarian. Maybe I should go look. If they were considering voting for Bernie, maybe I should go talk to them.
On an anecdotal level, I have a friend who's like a huge Bernie, a guy I work with, huge Bernie supporter. And he's told me, because we've talked about Adam and stuff like that, and we talked about Cynthia McKinney. He's like, "Oh yeah, I voted for her," and I think it was 2008. He voted for her, and so I was like, "Oh, all right, okay, well, so there's an element of that, the people who voted for crap, what was the guy's name? Green Party guy in 2000 that they all blame now for like costing Al Gore the election. I can't. The name escapes me now, but anyway, it's going to come to me. Yes, Nader. That's it, Ralph Nader. Yeah. So, that there are people who are, disciplined enough, principled enough. Whether you agree with their principles or not, at least you can, respect. You can respect the fact that they don't sell out.
Right. Well, they're at least challenging the current authority. They may not have gotten to their challenging authority, but they might be at challenging the current authority.
Yeah, they're still in that get the right person in there, and things will be better if the right person's in there. And it's like, what if no person belongs there? Like our favorite sidewalk chair was saying something the other night about I think it was last night maybe. About how, would it be better if we replaced every member of Congress with a random person from their district or whatever? I was like, what if we replaced it with no one?
Right. I mean, he's already making an argument for random.
That's what I'm like.
How about we just put it in our community?
How about zero? How about we just use zero instead of a random number?
Right. Yeah. How about we just, instead of doing that, which I like what you're thinking, Mr. Sidewalk, but how about instead of doing that, we just let communities decide for themselves? How about that?
Right. Exactly.
So we continued to go through stuff. I did things like I'm also friends with Lucy Brenton, who ran for the Senate here in Indiana. What was really fun is that on her live stream, actually on Carlos's live stream, because I got on 2 live streams with Lucy, her own and Carlos, who works for Rogue Media, if anybody knows who that is. But anyhow, so got an official endorsement, which I knew she was supporting Adam, but got an official endorsement at this protest from our former Senate candidate for Adam Kokesh, which is fun. Yeah. So that's cool. But so did a bunch of talking, talked to a few people, talked to a Trump supporter, and all in all, very little politics was actually talked about. The kind of things, yes, there were people that got on camera. Don got on camera, and he talked about what his plan would be. When people made it to the camera, yeah, they put their ideas out there, and if they're
getting asked about that stuff too,
correct.
So
and if you're Don, you're talking about, hey, I want to get elected, and if you're talking to a Trump supporter, they're talking about Trump's awesome, because that's what they're doing. So understand, I was never asked to be on camera. I'm not there in a suit. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I'm not trying to.
You're just a guy out there doing your thing.
Yep. And so I don't get asked. And neither does Lucy. Neither does anybody who doesn't like they wind up going after a bunch of like Trump alluded out people because they look cool and they will look interesting on camera. And so you can see the wheels turning in the reporters while you're there on how to make this a narrative. So so we basically just walked around. There was no violence, none, nothing at all, not even a thought of violence. There was nothing like that. It was very peaceful. It was largely just fun. There were people out there with their kids, with this, and there's nobody out there sick and dying and none of that. And these people that have come out afterwards are like, oh, now it's going to spread. No, it's not. That protest, which, to be clear, my estimation, I didn't go 1, 2, 3, that didn't happen.
Right.
But my estimation is somewhere between 200 and 300 people. For downtown Indianapolis, that's a pretty good sized group. And we're not talking about like in Indianapolis, there's a circle where there's a bunch of room. No. This is right in front of the governor's mansion. So this is just a road. And that 200 to 300 people might not include how many of the people are just going back and forth in vehicles.
Right.
So all in all, it was a successful display in the fact that we got out there and said, we're done with this. We let him know. We got in, the group got in the newspaper. We got on the television. So it was successful. Did it get anything done? No, because they don't give a shit about what the people want. So do you have any questions for me beyond that?
Well, so yeah, what I'm wondering, so like from the standpoint of what happened to you afterwards, like what was the big gripe? Was it that you participated in this concept of like undoing the lockdown, like kind of unrolling that, in whatever form or fashion, but opening things back up to, I mean, I guess I'm thinking you can hold, it just seems like there's a lot of like false dichotomy, sort of pseudo cognitive dissonance sort of understanding from people that if you say we want to open things back up, that means you just don't care about people and you want people to die. And their position can be that it does, because I heard somebody say this, somebody was saying, well, maybe we should just let things go, run their course, and let everybody who's going to get infected, because, if you think about how this thing is how they're talking about it being stretched out, they're talking about a second wave in the fall and winter, a third wave coming again in this, in maybe next year or something like that. And then they want to do the vaccine thing, but then they're talking about there's people with antibodies who are getting infected again. I'm like, okay, well then what is a vaccine going to do to help that? You have all these different questions that are not even really answered. Mm-hmm. And the response is always, well, if you don't mind XYZ percentage of the population just dying because of this thing, it's like, well, you don't seem to care about the people who are like going into bankruptcy and potentially going to die if they're not dying already. Like you're talking about with the homeless people, where they can't eat.
Right.
They don't have food. They don't have food. They don't. And if people aren't going to church and kids aren't going to school and having little canned food drives for the food bank, and people aren't volunteering at the soup kitchen or volunteering at the food bank or volunteering at the homeless shelter because they're afraid or because they're banned from doing it, then like at what point on the, it's like we're seeing this like real time trolley car dichotomy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Which one are you going to pull the lever and kill the 5 people, or are you going to let the thing kill the one guy? And it's like, well, fuck, like I don't know, but like I think trying to play God in the midst of all this stuff and having no regard for the unintended consequences, assuming they're unintended, just seems reckless to me. Seems very, very. There's a moral high ground that's been claimed, and I think it's preposterous and it's bogus bullshit that you think you have the moral high ground because you say, well, I don't want these people to get sick and to die from this thing.
Like we do.
So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to lock everybody in their homes. My wife, she sent me something that it was pretty spot on. Said quarantine is when you restrict the movement of sick people so that they don't infect other healthy people with whatever they have. Tyranny is when you restrict the movement of healthy people. And that's where we are. We are at the, it doesn't matter what you are, who you are. Well, it does. We have it created a caste system of essential people and not essential people. And apparently fucking Office Depot and PetSmart and Walmart and Burger King and McDonald's are essential.
Yeah. Well,
but a lawn care group who doesn't even come in contact with any people, they're banned. They're shut down. Right. We don't need you going out there because you might infect people. Like, what the fuck? You just make this shit up as you go?
Yes,
no logic or science behind it whatsoever. It's just, and then they're giving these small business loans to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Target and all. It's like,
all the buddies.
Are these small businesses? Like, what the hell? I want a small business.
Right.
If that's what a small business is. Shit.
Right.
I'm a minuscule business.
I think Larkin Rose said it really well the other day. I reshared this on Twitter. He talked about that, we're staying 6 feet apart, putting masks on, putting gloves on, so that we can go, all of us, go and touch, because you got to take your glove off to touch the touch screen that everybody else touched and get into the change thing that everybody else touched. This is all bullshit. And, these obviously are being performed for other reasons, simply because if you were really trying to not, get diseases to go, this wouldn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
What's amazing is like the same grocery store cashiers and everything else. None of those people are getting infected. It's amazing.
I know.
Amazing. It's a fucking miracle. It is a miracle that
God
none of the
bless
fast food workers and none of the grocery store workers are getting sick.
And that's another thing too. All these people. Right. With all of these people saying, ooh, bless the nurses, bless the doc. Where's bless the Walmart cashier? bless the guy that cleans the shit out in the bathroom at the Kroger. Where's his adulations?
It's almost the only people keeping you alive are the Costco, Walmart, Kroger cashiers, because they're letting you get food from somewhere. Because you can't go to a damn restaurant unless it's a fast food restaurant, and then you can go to the window where they're not wearing gloves or masks, and they hand you your dollar bills that have way more germs on them than anything else that you'll ever come in contact with.
Yeah.
It's like, what the?
Or you can take. They might just use a card, and you can put your card in the same slot that everybody else's card is in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this isn't how you sterilize things. This isn't how you do it. This is how you control a population.
Yeah. So back to the thing with what happened to you. So my question, I guess, is what's the complaint that was levied against you that warrants a death threat?
I am going to kill everyone. They believe that because I went to this.
So you're like a terrorist with a bomb vest.
Right.
You got an explosive suicide vest on.
Right. And they also attacked my
daughter.
daughter.
Shooting you in the head and shooting your daughter and your wife in the head to prevent that from happening. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And how dare I disobey? That's a quote.
Wow.
How dare I disobey?
And this is a group of I've seen what
hippies. These are hippies.
These are hippies. These are not, well, what's funny is, there was a time way back when the hippies were against the man.
Right.
And then there's a whole bunch of hippies that became the man.
Yeah.
And then it became like hip to be the man.
Right.
And so I guess,
and sold out.
It's funny, like, so this leads well into my article that I have because but I want to let you finish your thing. But let's put a pin in it.
Go ahead
back to it, huh?
Why don't we go ahead and dive into your article? If you think this moves right into it, let's do that.
Yeah. Well, so this is like maybe a day old. The 20th. Okay. So this is from EngageNet.com. I'll give you the link because I think I sent you a Yahoo link, but it like links to this somehow. Anyway, Facebook has been consulting with governors about anti-quarantine protests that could break states' local distancing rules. The platform has already removed posts promoting anti-quarantine protests in California. Let's remember California, New Jersey, Nebraska. New Jersey and Nebraska. CNN report Donnie O'Sullivan tweeted today. Facebook is reportedly, this is yesterday, Facebook is reportedly working with New York, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania to determine if anti-quarantine protests break those states' social distancing rules too. And this is the tweet from Donnie O'Sullivan. Facebook says it has removed promotion of anti-quarantine events in California, New Jersey, and Nebraska after consultation with state governments. Now, let's talk about oh shit, where did it go? Man, where's the it must be, I think it's on that computer. But anyway, there's a really funny so you saw the mayor of, I think it's the mayor of LA. I can't remember his name. His name escapes me at the moment. But it's on that article that I can't get to because it's on this computer. Anyway, he said, you know that old famous saying about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. So maybe I'm thinking, maybe your friends are trying to get a reward.
Oh my God.
Maybe they think they can help get a bounty put on your head. I don't know. But yeah, he definitely said that. Like Google that shit. It's let me see. I'm gonna try and pull it up.
I'll put it in. If it's in that article you sent me, I'll put it in the show.
No, it's not in the article I sent you. I'm gonna have to send you a different. It's LA Mayor Garcetti. I don't see where it says what his first name is. Eric Garcetti said this week that snitches in his city will get rewards. That's probably from a couple of weeks ago. Right. But yeah, just in case you were wondering, this is who's looking out for you. Snitches get rewards.
Right.
So the article. No, go ahead. What?
No, I was just gonna say they this isn't anything new. This is the same shit that the Nazis were doing. Show your
neighbors, and if you think your neighbor's up to no good, it goes back to, drawing the parallel again to 9/11 and where we are now with this stuff. There's so many parallels that it's scary. But you remember the whole campaign, it still exists today. You go to the movies or you go anywhere where you like in an airport or anything like that. If you see something, say something.
Right. Snitches
get rewards.
No, I don't get rewards in my neck of the woods.
Right. So like if I see something, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna avoid that dude, but I'm not gonna go and be like, hey, I don't like the way that guy's bag looks over there. You want to maybe like frisk him, see if you can get your hand halfway up his ass, and maybe then we'll find out that actually there's nothing wrong with his bag. But hey, let's take the guns first, due process later.
Okay, Donald.
To quote Trump, it's like we'll rape you first, and then we'll go through due process to see if you deserve to be raped or not later. No, thank you. I'll just go ahead and skip right past the raping and go into whatever the fuck I was there to do in the first place that had nothing to do with rape. So anyway, so it says, unless government prohibits the event during this time, we allow it to be organized on Facebook. For this same reason, events that defy government's guidance on social distancing aren't allowed on Facebook. And it goes on. There's more of kind of the same thing. And they went through like a whole misinformation thing. And I got a thing today. So we use Telegram for a lot of our different chats and stuff like that. Telegram came down because Telegram is like, it's encrypted. It's for free thinking people, yada, yada. Apparently not so much, because the CEO today came down with this, and I won't pull it up, but basically went through this whole thing of people, they're trying to cut down or tamp down on the spreading of unverified information. And my question was very simple. If you stop the flow of unverified information, how do you ever verify any information?
Right.
Because first, information has to be purveyed, and then it can be verified. Right. But if you choke it off at the source before it gets disseminated, then you're not really talking about, this isn't freedom or information. This is just what you propaganda are handed down from your lords.
Yeah, right. And that is exactly what this is. This is them. Every time these people have said, well, Facebook, Twitter, all these are private organizations. They can do what they want. How many times you've heard it? 1,000 goddamn times. It is not a open source corporation if the government is dictating what they can and cannot do.
Not only that, but if they're getting subsidies too.
Correct. Which again, I covered in the Facebook, the face when they took me down. I covered all that. I also covered it I did an article for Adam, which I'll have to link in the bottom, called "Seeing Through the Lies," where I investigated propaganda in Facebook's use. There's one of the articles I used. They absolutely are using Facebook as propaganda. It is on purpose. And so they know, how many times have you heard that what went on in the Middle East and with the, what was it, the Muslim Spring or whatever it was?
The Arab Spring. Yeah.
Arab Spring.
Yeah. Egypt and Libya. And
that was fueled by social media. Well, they must have learned, we don't want that shit to happen here. Fuck that. We got to lock that shit down.
Yeah. And never mind the fact that we were like arming certain parts of that.
Right.
So
I'm not trying. That's all bull. But
right.
But the fact is they definitely figured out in the way that, like, the yellow vests and the people in Hong Kong, people in yellow vests were using Twitter and Facebook to organize. Right. The fucking people in Hong Kong were using Telegram to organize. They figured it out.
Yeah. So here's what it says. It says there's several paragraphs. I'll just read this one little 2-sentence paragraph. It says, "This is a chance for people to use their time in isolation to create a better version of themselves." Listen to this. It's like they start you down the path with this, this is going to make you better. Right. Let me finish telling you how to make yourself better. And a chance for technology to prove its worth for humanity. I believe we at Telegram should do all we can, not only to help contain the pandemic and combat the spread of unverified information, but also to find new ways of moving forward. Combat the spread of unverified information. Again, if you combat the spread of unverified information, instead of refuting that information, so that's been my big thing is, if you ever watch, they take the post down. Yeah. They don't provide a counter argument. Right. It's the equivalent of nah, I don't want to hear you when you're hearing something you don't want to hear, or right. Shut up, bitch, when somebody says something you don't have an argument. It's not an argument. Okay. Convince people. If you have the truth, it should not be hard to convince people that what they just saw is a lie. Right. But if you don't have the truth, you have to destroy the other message so that it doesn't get out to people who are seeking the truth.
Well, and you can see this. I've said this before, but you can see that they're doing that by the fact that where are the photos? Where are the videos of all of this pandemic sweeping across everywhere? And again, I'm not saying that there isn't a sickness. I'm saying it's not as bad as they're saying. If it was, there would be video everywhere, but It's not there.
No, instead what we have is, these are the videos I've seen, okay? I have seen a girl crying, saying that she didn't get a mask and that she quit her job or she got fired I think she quit because of something that they wouldn't let her do or something like that. And then you find out, and CBS ran with this thing. Then you find out she hadn't worked at the hospital in over a year before all this shit even started.
Right.
And she's like an Instagram, not a model, but like she's a thought anyway. So you got that. Then I've seen a bunch of TikTok videos of nurses who apparently have time to organize and choreograph TikTok videos in empty hospital rooms with empty beds and with 5 or 6 nurses all choreographing this thing. And again, I say that I have like, my sister's a nurse, my sister-in-law's a nurse. I'm not trying to like shit on nurses in general, but I'm saying like, this shit does not add up with the official story. And the other videos that I've seen are people going to hospitals and videoing like the empty emergency area, the empty parking lot. And I get like the parking lot's probably not going to be as full as it normally is, because if you're not allowed to go see people who are at, a lot of what you see in the parking lots at hospitals is people who work there combined with people going to visit sick relatives or people having babies or whatever the case may be, or somebody who's going into surgery or something like that. It's generally not the guy who's dying, who's driving his car and pulls over dead into the emergency room. I get it. I get all that. But it's shockingly quiet in a lot of these videos that I've seen. And again, to your point, so we've got fake videos, people lying. We've got TikTok videos of people dancing to choreographed dances where they apparently have time to choreograph dances. This isn't just like somebody getting on and doing a little, 3-second dance. This is some people choreographing some stuff that, I mean, it probably takes them 30 minutes to an hour to like get everybody in sync and do, because there's like 6 or 7 people and they're all doing different things, and then they all come together, and it's like they're doing a decent job. I mean, it still sucks, but they're doing a decent job of choreographing this stuff. You see those things, but you have not seen the video that supports the narrative. I have not seen the video that supports the narrative. Oh, the other videos I've seen is, you've seen the video of the guy where they're like pinning him down against his wishes to jam a Q-tip all the way to the back of his nasal cavity so they can test him. You've seen those? These are the videos that I've seen, and I have not seen what you're talking about. I have seen some videos and clips that have been like reused 17 times. This is in Italy. This is in Germany. This is, well, what? Goddamn, the same fucking doctor and the same coffins are in the same, or in 18 different countries. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, he travels around.
So I'm with you. Like, I don't want to try to pretend like the people who are on the ground dealing with this stuff are not really going through it. They're going through something. I don't know what it is. But I feel pretty skeptical about what the official story about what it is.
Okay, that gives me a good jump back into these 2 articles about the what I just described to you from my experience being there. Well, first of all, this comes from News 8 Indiana. So this is on television, but it says Indianapolis wish. Dozens of people line the streets. Notice, dozens of people line the streets this afternoon protesting Governor Holcomb's stay-at-home order. That stay-at-home order is extended to May 1st, which he did on Friday. He extended it, made it longer. And so dozens, okay? Is it true that there were dozens of people there? Lots and lots of dozens.
Yeah, I was going to say dozens of dozens.
There are dozens of people. So first off, they're setting you up. Because when you say dozens, that means less.
It sounds like about 30 or maybe 50 people were there.
Right. There were between 200 and 300 by my estimation.
Yeah.
So these protesters said they didn't want to wait any longer for life to return to normal. Oh, that's all we had to say. We're ready for life to get back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
They shouted that it's time for Indiana to open back up. That means going back to work, returning to places of worship, and a restoration of life before the virus. The bottom line is none of that really was said because nobody there anticipates going back to life as it was before the virus because they have decimated our economy. And
Yeah,
these
right.
people, whether they are Trump supporters, they're libertarians, or just concerned people, none of them, every single one of them knew, none of them were unaware of the economic repercussions, which they are not bothering to mention.
Right.
So this is a quote. I'm concerned that our constitutional rights are being trampled, said Brian Schrank. And he said, I think that it is a bigger issue, in my opinion, than the virus. I think what's happening is these governors are acting like kings and tyrants, and they're taking upon themselves authority that they necessarily don't have. Notice, deflecting directly to the governors. Yes, we were out there, telling Holcomb to open things back up. Understand, this is what I didn't get from the Trump supporters being there, is they are trying to make this not Trump's fault.
Right.
How the hell? He is calling these governors, has said that he is calling these governors. He is telling them, I cannot prove it, but you know as well as I do that he is on there saying close down for this amount of time because those governors have been getting together, including the governor of Indiana, with Ohio and Michigan and all the surrounding governors on a conference call, and then boom, 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 they all close their shit down. That's how it worked.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say so. Go back to the first part of that quote from Mr. Schrank.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What's that? What does that say again? I have a comment on that.
I'm concerned that our constitutional rights are being trampled.
What constitution, motherfucker?
Right. Right, exactly.
You're concerned? You're concerned at this point?
If you're just waking up to being concerned now.
It's like, I'm concerned, Marcus, I'm concerned that I'm on a podcast right now.
I know.
I've been on a podcast for an hour, but I'm concerned I'm on one.
Right, I know.
Realizing, like, what?
I know. But hey, if they're waking up to the game, come on board. I get it.
Right. Yeah, at least he doesn't think that
we're good.
This is totally normal.
Yeah, but what is sad is that they're painting the picture like Trump was like, yeah, and that's what my one friend had that was posting on my post had tried to compare me to Trump. Like come on, ass clown. Trump is part of this establishment that is a pain in the ass. That hadn't changed, and he was one of the people pushing for these governors to shut shit down.
And even if he's not, I'm still waiting for like the 900 millionth move of 7 billion dimensional chess.
Right, I know. I am so fucking sick of hearing about QAnon. Oh my God!
I'll say this, but I really hope it's all true. I just have no reason to really believe it at this point because golly, man, it's like you really have to be a very, very benefit of the doubt trusty person to not be like, hey, so how long is this supposed to take?
Right.
Does he have to get elected first? Like, does he have to? So in January, that's when it's going to start. Like after he gets inaugurated for the second time, that's when he's going to be like, all right, I don't have to worry about getting reelected anymore. So like now that you remember that meme with like 2024, 2028, 2032, like maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's it. I agree. And yeah, these idiots just I don't get it. And I'm sure that there are a lot of them that are well-meaning. I really am. I am certain that there are people.
For sure. Yeah.
But come on, people. If you are smart enough to look into it this far, look a little bit farther. So this is one of my favorites, too, out of this article. One man, referring to himself as Whitey.
Bro, you can't do that when I'm drinking. I had to do everything in my power to hold that in. I almost spit on 3 computers.
Right. I referring to himself as Whitey. They chose this motherfucker, which, by the way, he looked like a hillbilly out there. Ding, 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 ding. You know, meanwhile, I'm in a group of people. You could not. Were there more white people than black people there? Certainly. Have you checked out the amount of percentage of blacks to whites in Indiana?
I was going to say I haven't been to Indiana in a long time, but you start getting up there unless you're like closer to like Detroit and stuff like that. Because I've been to like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and stuff, and it's been to Illinois, and if you're not like south side of Chicago or whatever, it's some really really white areas. So it's not. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not.
And that's just it. I would guess this is what's funny. They painted that by interviewing Whitey. They painted that this was all a white thing. Mm-hmm. I guarantee there were more of a percentage of minorities at this protest than are in the state of Indiana. Like if there's like 10% of the state.
What about Indianapolis though? How is Indianapolis?
There's a fair amount of minorities for sure. Okay. But how many of them are engaged in what Holcomb is doing?
Yeah. Okay.
Because for one of the things I found interesting is Holcomb, who's our governor, is a Republican. Mm-hmm. So these people, this is why this is a good time for Don to hit it hard, is because these people are pissed off at a Republican. Now, how many of them are just going to go and pull one button? I don't know, but you know my point. So
we saw that with Maj in Philadelphia, even with someone who you really listen to what he's talking about, and you follow like how he moves in the world, what he's trying to do, and like really putting work in, and it's still like he couldn't even get people to lift a finger to not vote Democrat for those at large seats. Yeah. What I'm saying, like they wouldn't even vote for a Republican. He tried to run as a Libertarian. I think it would have been even worse if he had run as a Republican. At least Libertarian, they're like, what does that mean? I'm still going to vote for a Democrat. Whereas Republican, they'd be like, Democrat.
He's a traitor.
And I have family like that who, shocker, but my family's white. And they're like, there's so many of them like back for a couple of generations that died in the wool Democrats that like it didn't matter if it didn't matter if Jesus Christ himself came down and said, I'm a Republican, they would not vote for a Republican. Right. And so it's just there's a lot of that. It just doesn't even. Yep. It's hard. It's a hard shell to crack sometimes.
Absolutely. So back to what Whitey had to say. He now keep in mind they're not actually quoting him.
Oh, Whitey.
Probably because he couldn't enunciate 3 words together. Is my guess. But what Whitey told me, that the public is scared by what they've seen in the media, they subscribe to, and scared of what that could happen if the state doesn't open back up. So they're trying to twist that we're the ones that are afraid. We're the ones. We're out there, waving flags. And
you're the ones who are potentially you're the ones who are getting death threats for violating social distancing, but you're the ones who are afraid.
Right.
Okay. Like, wouldn't the people making death threats be the ones who are afraid?
Right. So
until the death threats happen, then you're afraid of the death threats.
Right. Then maybe you get a little bit scared. I know, because these are hippies and they don't have guns, and I do.
Right. So, you didn't make any death threats, though.
No. But yeah, so that's one other twist. So I'm going to continue. COVID-19 is something many weren't scared of to an extent. Social distancing was thrown out the window. No, it wasn't.
What the fuck?
Yeah, social distancing was thrown out the window. People were being respectful, but many people still had masks on for protection. The gathering was far larger than what's allowed by the governor's orders. That's because there's only supposed to be 10. There's 10. One of your dozens is out.
Right. So, you can have 0 dozens.
Right, 0 dozens allowed.
You can have 1 dozen minus 2.
Right.
And that's it.
So So the gathering was far larger than what's allowed by the governor's orders, but the police did not do anything about the crowd. Oh, how nice of them! How nice of them
Hey,
to not make martyrs of
what's funny
everybody.
about that? Speaking of gatherings of 10 or more, you know where there's a gathering of 10 or more every fucking day?
Police.
The border of Louisiana and Texas.
Mm.
And it's all cops.
Yeah, I know. Because cops getting together, diseases don't like cops. I understand that. I don't like cops, so I kind of get it. Diseases like,
By the way, that shit Adam did yesterday with his free hugs shirt on was.
I know, hilarious.
That was hilarious. Oh shit, man!
Yeah. So if they did, some protesters said they were ready. Yeah, and we were. You know, Don had his lawyer there, prepared, just in case they carted his ass.
Yeah, you got to be.
Yep. So, quote, some of us are willing to be arrested. Yeah, Schrank said. I don't believe it's going to happen, but if it does get to that point, we think that we would be a smart deal to get arrested, because then we're going to file a lawsuit against the state for violating our constitutional rights. But I don't think the police want to take that chance. This guy, they don't want to take that chance. Fuck you and your chance. The police don't give a damn.
Right. They'll just conduct an internal investigation and find out that there was no wrongdoing.
Right. They do not give a shit. Exactly. And that is how it always works. My favorite was when Brian Ellison up and yeah, Brian got a little wacky lately, but I don't care. I still like Brian. Yeah. He had 2 people killed by his police department in cold blood. They killed them. They didn't even have an internal investigation. They said, "Nah, we're good." So anyway, to continue this, some called for the governor to address the crowd and explain himself. But in the end, they say they just want to be able to live the way they want. That was never said. Well, the thing is, Chad, that was never said. We didn't say, "We do what I want." That never came out. We said, let's get the fuck back to work. Let's let people live their lives and make money, and let's let the economy pick back up.
Right.
So, quote, we want the Americans to be able to go to work safely again, Regina Gingrich said. My favorite part about that is they didn't correct this lady's language. We want the Americans to be able to go to work safely.
She's speaking in third person about the Americans.
Right. They didn't correct her at all. So you can imagine Whitey's language was great.
Yeah.
So the healthy working Americans should be able to go back to work safely. People are going to go hungry if we don't go back to work. That's absolutely true. I mean, and it's not even the people that are wanting to go back to work. It's sometimes, you know, the bottom line is some of these homeless people, you know, you can make an argument that, you know, yeah, they're hooked on drugs, or they have this problem or that problem or this problem or that. But if they don't have food, how are they going to change all that? If they don't have clothing, you know, a long time ago, someone impressed upon me, and I don't even remember who it was, when talking about that, because I used to be of the opinion that I'm not going to give them my money so that they can go buy beer. You know, I used to be of that opinion. Oh, no, I'm a good person. I believe that I'm a good person. So when I give to somebody, I am doing a good deed. If I give them, let's say, $20, I have done a good deed by giving them $20. They're the ones that did something fucked up if they go buy some beer. That's on them. That ain't on me.
Yeah, yeah, and if you have the time or whatever, there's some kind of simple workarounds too for that too. You can ask, you know, hey, what do you need? You know, oh, you need food? Okay, cool. Let me go grab you. I'll get you, you know, a loaf of bread. I'll get you some peanut butter, and, you know, get you some jelly. Get you a thing of plastic knives so you can make yourself some sandwiches so you can eat.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I don't want that. Yeah, okay, all right. What do you really want? What would you prefer to eat?
You know, and this
I don't really want food. Oh, okay, you don't really want food. And I had one guy in New Orleans. it's New Orleans, so you just got to kind of recognize. But he just looked up and goes, I'm not gonna lie, I want some weed. And I was like, all right, man, here's $5, man. I can't. I'm just gonna respect I'm gonna respect your honesty and just hand you $5 and say rock on, man. Go ahead, do your thing.
It reminds me, we were I was like 19, 20, something like that. But me and some buddies were out partying, and I had to have been 21 because we were at the bar. So we're out partying, right? So we walk into this Taco Bell and this is like 2:00 in the morning. On the counter, it says, "Need buds." Well, being in my group of friends, we had buds. So we ate like kings because my friend Dave laid a couple of buds down on the table and said, "What does that buy?" But it just your story reminded me of that.
That's funny. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty. You've got, and the other thing is too, like what people don't really realize is, so this has kind of been my perspective on this. I've always thought that, like I said last week, you've got a spectrum of either you believe everything about this that we're being told by the experts and by the talking heads and all that stuff. You buy into all of everything, and all the case numbers are dead on, or they're underestimated, and all the death numbers are dead on or underestimated, or you believe that it's all bullshit and it's like a made up thing or a chemical weapon or whatever, somewhere over here, and then there's like all this in between, and it's a spectrum of different possibilities. We don't really know because they're never gonna really, like we found out with, like I said a long time ago, like a month and a half ago probably, I said the truth about this whole thing is probably buried right next to the WMDs.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you follow where I'm going,
I do.
It's about the same kind of bullshit story. Now, there might be something that you can trace back that's, gives it some sort of credibility, but by and large, like, we're being manipulated and we're being lied to. And when you think about how that kind of manifests itself and what the rollout is of how that's going to impact us and how we're going to be manipulated and what the objectives are that are being sought after and achieved as a result of it, my whole take was, as long as, like, and all those things that they've kept open gives you a window into what's really important to them. Yeah. And if you think about it from like a slave owner sort of mindset, we are wage and debt slaves. All this money printing is another just double down, triple down on that. And there's only a certain amount of time where our productivity will be restricted because we are feeding them and their lifestyle.
For sure.
And when we are feeding them and their lifestyle, they're not going to lock us down forever and keep us from, now they might push us to the brink because they can live off of, probably, 5-10 years off of what we've already done and what we've already produced to a large degree, but it's not going to go on forever. And the biggest thing that we have to be careful of is even less so like how you navigate this economy, but how do you assert your rights and how do you proceed to build something for yourself that goes beyond this? Because coming out of this, if you are in the same position, relying on Target and Walmart and all that stuff for all of your food, and you're relying on your 9-to-5 that got shut down for this thing for all of your income, and you don't have any sort of other investment, and you're not taking advantage of the fact that there are some assets that are going to be on sale right now because of all this, and you have to kind of take your I'm not saying don't be compassionate. Compassion is always a good thing, but when you look at it's at a certain point, it just becomes numbers. It just becomes math. And if there are assets that are heavily distressed and they're on sale, buy them if you can and rejuvenate them. because we are at a point where if you don't do it, someone much worse than you is going to. And now they've got control of that asset.
Yeah, think about what's going on right now with oil.
Yeah. I'm selling my house. We move out in 2 weeks. If I weren't selling my house, I would have been making phone calls to try to find out how I could fill my pool up with oil.
Right.
Because I can hold about 25,000 gallons in my pool. Right. And that's about, I don't know, 10 grand or so.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Buy oil. If you have money.
If they're paying you $20 or $30 or whatever to put
paying you a
it was almost $40. It was almost $40 a barrel, which is 42 gallons. So it's probably, so if you do the math on that, I was probably closer to, I'd have to do the math again, but anyway, it was a few $1,000s worth of oil I could have stored in my pool. Wow. Then sold it when it goes back up to $15-$20 a barrel,
Right, and this just plays into what you talked about last week, though. You said this last week, that they are just depressing all of these fucking things, and people can go out and buy them at a low price.
Yeah,
and it monopolize it. But you and I don't have a bunch of money, right. Whereas a couple months
ExxonMobil and Chevron and Saudi Arabia and you got these different major players that are scooping these things up, and then what you're seeing too is you're seeing some bankruptcies they're right on the horizon if they haven't already started to happen. And so all it does is what it is it's kind of like when you have, I don't know if you play poker or not, but play like Texas Hold'em or something like that. You get the small stack. Small stack's got like 5 or 6 blinds left, 5 or 6 big blinds left in his stack. Well, you can just blind him out, and then like if he goes all in, like you have 3 or 4 guys, call that bet because he's a very small stack, and no one else raises because you can just see if any of your hands beats his hand, and then you kill him, and then he's gone. Yeah. And that makes it to where you're more likely to win the final prize pool. And it's kind of like one of those Survivor type of agreements, And that's sort of the same thing that's happening here. All the big players are just kind of watching, and they're just kind of looking. They're like, let's wait until he dies. When he dies, we're going to go pick up his corpse, and we're going to pillage his pockets, see if he's got money or ammunition or guns on him.
Yeah. The good news for me is that one of the things that I noticed, oil went to shit. Bitcoin has stayed level.
Held its own.
And that's good, because that means that Bitcoin wasn't affected by the drop in oil, which is a major contributor to the dollar. So that's an indicator that when the dollar finally drops, when the dollar finally follows that oil, Bitcoin might not follow all the way down to the fucking basement.
Right.
That means that my prediction that Bitcoin's about to spike is probably accurate. So Bitcoin buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that pretty much finished up that article. To dive into the other propaganda, because this is the other side of the propaganda. Right. This is from the Indianapolis Star. And they said more than 200 protesters rally outside of governor's residence to say Holcomb's orders go too far. So they got the number right.
So I'm guessing this isn't a positive supportive article.
No, it is not.
But it's making it sound like more than 200 crazy people.
Right.
So one side is like dozens to make it sound like look, there's crazy people, but there's not that many. We got them outnumbered. We're good. And the other side is like, there's all these fucking crazy people.
Right. Yeah. More than 200 people rallied Saturday afternoon outside governor's residence on Meridian Street to protest what they describe as government overreach in the efforts to curb the spread of the coronavirus. The protest criticized Governor Eric Holcomb and his series of executive orders, which have restricted which businesses can operate and have directed residents to stay at home except for essential trips. And this is where the crazy comes in. Quote, "Are we Russia?" End quote. The writing on one passing RV asked as it honked in support of the crowd. Protesters compared Holcomb to a tyrant, arguing that the order violates the U.S. Constitution and the Indiana Constitution, which it does. But
yeah, I was going to say that doesn't sound crazy to me. None of it so far, but I get the way you choose words carefully when you're writing something like that, and it tells your audience what you're all about.
Yep, he's not a king. End quote. Notice these are little quotes of boom, boom. We're not Russia. He's not a king. Notice no depth, not a bit of depth to any of these arguments. These are just people screaming, as they said earlier.
Spouting off. Yeah, spouting off. Yeah.
Greencastle resident Elizabeth Ficus said amid cheers and honks from the crowd, quote, "We have separation of powers for a reason." Because that has nothing to do with the governor. Not a thing. They just showed her to be an idiot, which she probably was, but they showed her to be an idiot because Holcomb doesn't have a damn thing to do with the separation of powers.
And well, and not only that, but like, just not to put too fine of a point on it, but yeah, I just tell somebody, like, separation of powers is kind of like going to the Walmart board of directors to complain about a manager on duty at Walmart enforcing company policy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, we conducted an internal investigation and we found no wrongdoing.
Yeah, right.
There was no evidence of wrongdoing whatsoever. Like, oh damn, man. So you ruled that your unconstitutional shit was constitutional. Yeah. All right, well, we lost. Thank you, John Roberts and Obamacare. You know, it's like, this shit's a tax. No, it's not a tax, it's a fee. Oh, well, now it's a tax. So now we have the interstate commerce clause that gets brought in. I'm like, man, goddamn, y'all really fucking, y'all swished this thing from half court, didn't y'all? Golly.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rothbard covered all that crap in Anatomy of the State.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're going to Uncle Ted to tell him that his son molested your kid, and he asks his wife if they think they should murder his son. It's like, well, that's, first of all, we weren't even asking for that. We're just we're telling you, like, your kid molested our kid.
Right.
Yeah, well, we don't agree. So, like, well, can we have, like, somebody who's not related to him? Anyway, it's just very fucked up.
So, yeah, getting back. Andy Horning, who I know personally, just to this person detests me. His biggest problem with Adam is that Adam, he shows up in sunglasses and doesn't always have a suit on. So Andy Horning of Freedom, who is not involved in the Libertarian Party, but is in the business of telling the Libertarian Party how to succeed, just to be clear. That's this guy. This guy is a Republican who
I get that argument because, like, to a certain extent, there are people who they need that comfort. They need the doctor to be in a lab coat, even if he's not doing any lab work or surgery or anything like that. And I get that and everything, but I also, like, think it's a really shitty argument for why you shouldn't listen to some ideas.
Well, yeah, but in particular, he gave this particular argument against Adam was on his podcast. It is his damn podcast.
It's his podcast. Yeah.
It's not him coming out for a presidential thing, which he comes out in a suit for. No, this is just on his podcast. Anyway. But
I don't like fireside chats because it sounds like he's sitting by the fire when he's doing it.
I know. Exactly. And so anyway, but this guy is, like, defected from the Libertarian Party some time ago, became a Republican, and then gets mad when I'm like, all right, dude, but you left. You joined
and as far as the fireside chats thing, fuck FDR too, by the way. But anyway, that's beside the point. So
Andy Horning of Freedom acknowledged that the virus is a very serious thing, but he pointed to concerns with the government increasingly encroaching on individual rights. Quote, "No one person in America should have this much power. No one person should want that much power. That's a lot of accountability." So I can kind of agree with a lot of what he said there. So we'll leave that one alone. He argued for such decisions to be left to representatives who would more closely reflect the will of their constituents. But keep in mind, he doesn't like.
I'm a little afraid of the will of some constituents, because they remember snitches get rewards.
Right.
Some of them snitches want to murder Marcus Pulis.
Right. Exactly.
Like, I don't
they
know.
want me dead. So I'm against them. The concerns in freedom, he noted, are not the same as they are in Indianapolis. Quote, I've got kids who want to live a good life, he said. I don't want to bequeath them a Venezuela. I don't want to bequeath them a North Korea. Again, I can agree with him. So the governor's constitutional authority, this is where they're going to blow him to pieces, because he just said all that, right? So this is where they are going to now say, Governor Eric Holcomb on Friday said he would extend his stay-at-home order through May 1st. Indiana's emergency disaster law gives the power to the... So they just built him up. This is the expert who is saying this is unconstitutional. Here it is. He's the only person that we have made sound like he has any sense at all in this article. Now we're going to blow him to pieces. Indiana emergency disaster law, link, gives the governor a number of additional powers during a declared public health emergency, including the ability to control the movement of people within the disaster area, which is the entire state. Holcomb expressed sympathy for residents at a news briefing earlier this week, but argued that the state has acted constitutionally through its entire process. Oh, Holcomb was caring about folks. This mean old guy up here from Freedom wants to just take all the caring away. Quote, if we disagree about that, then I'd be more than welcome to sit down with anyone that wants to go over the Constitution or see where our authority is derived from. So this ass clown has said, I'll talk with anybody. Now you come to my lawn and you gather in like 300, I ain't going to come out. So I'll talk to anybody except for when you come to my house. So yeah, now they have basically in this article stripped the only person who had any kind of authority, any kind of reasoned voice.
That wasn't just spouting off a one-liner or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they stripped every bit of it.
What's interesting about that too is so there's people just kind of drove right by this thing that happened on I think it's according to this it says it was March 24th, but the Defense Production Act and the kind of the FEMA handover, whatever it was that Trump just said, all right, FEMA's in control now. And he handed over the handling of the corona response, the COVID-19 response to Mike Pence. And he just kind of let him take. That's when we went from this I mean, it's almost like I'm not trying to do the Trump is Hitler thing or anything like that. So please, that's not what this is about. But just think, okay? When you go from things are normal, things are a certain way, and we recommend these things, we would like for people to do this. It'd be really good. You have an audience, you have a pulpit. People respect the office and the kind of the authority of the opinions and the expertise that's coming through that office and everything. And I get that. There's a very hard line difference between these are the recommendations that we have for everyone to go about their lives more safely and moving into invoking these emergency powers.
Yeah.
And you go back and look. I'm not saying Trump is Hitler. I'm just telling you to go back and look. After the Reichstag fire, what happened?
Yeah, it's
and how Chancellor Hitler became like the end all be all.
Yeah, well,
it was temporary until it wasn't anymore.
Right, you don't even have to go to Hitler. Go to Star Wars.
Yeah, no, right.
Yeah.
If you want the pop culture version
Right.
of that, you can just go to Chancellor Palpatine when
Right.
Chancellor Valorum is his authority is questioned by Palpatine. I mean by Senator Amidala, and they just decide, you know what? Yeah, fuck
Right.
this motherfucker. Give that guy out. And all the time he's Grandma Worm tonguing these people behind the scenes for another literature reference or pop culture reference or whatever. Grandma Worm tongue whispering in the ear of was it Theoden?
I don't remember his
Yeah,
name.
King
I told
Theoden.
his
It's
name,
King
but yeah.
Theoden in Minas Tirith. Yeah, and he's basically been um, horse whispering him this whole time. And man, and that's what I think. When you go back to all this stuff, you look at like Fauci and all um, his involvement. As you keep going back and you go back into the 80s and into the 90s and into the early 2000s, and then just a few years ago where he's kind of predicting some of this stuff very, very effectively. Like, man, how the fuck do you know this shit is going to happen? And the only thing you were able to do was be right in the right place when you were needed when it went down. But you didn't do anything to like stop it. But you talked about this shit in like 2015 and 2017, like you knew it was coming. I just I don't know. I have my very serious doubts about all this. But yeah, back to your point about when you have people who are talking about the governor overstepping bounds, all this kind of stuff. Well, when you go back and you look at when some of these emergency powers were, and the declaration of emergency back in like late February, early March, somewhere in that range, when those things started to happen, the chain reaction, the fuse was lit.
Yeah.
So this stuff was coming, and some of these people are very late to the party. People are finally getting to the point where they can't take it anymore. They thought it was going to be over by now. We were told mid-April.
Yeah.
And now it's like May 1st. And then there's some of these people that are talking about, no, it might not be till August. We might be pushing back. I think Boston area schools or Boston University or somebody like canceled the fall semester already. It's April. You canceled the fall semester?
Yeah. I'm telling you right now.
So people are getting to their breaking point. Yeah, people are getting to their breaking point.
I love my family. My little girl needs to stop. She's a smart little girl. She's a great little girl. She needs to not be doing, like, if we're going to have a homeschooling program, that's fine, because then I'm in control of it. But this bull crap of filling out computers to people that, like, we got her math grade, right? That her math teacher goes in once every 3 months and puts a grade in. So we don't know how good she's doing. And so she went from an A to an F overnight. And it's all because she missed a assignment like a week ago. Well, we didn't know nothing about. She missed that assignment. It brought a 0 in. So she went from an A, and there's only 3 grades. So that 1 0 just sliced that right down. And so this bull crap that they're currently doing has got to end. This is not going to be, if they are going to do this, extending this bullshit, I'm going to get me the Ron Paul curriculum and do this shit right.
That's what we're looking at too. That's because my wife is a teacher, and so she's kind of experiencing it. We're experiencing this on both sides firsthand.
I'm also guessing your wife gives a shit about her kids.
Yeah. Also, so she cares about our kids and she cares about the kids she's teaching, and the school where she teaches is actually, I mean, they're really good, and they were already. What's funny about it is like so much of the stuff that we're doing now, what they were already doing. Like the kids have, like when it was time to do the distance learning or whatever they call it, the kids just took an iPad home.
Yeah.
Everybody took an iPad home. They already were using them in the school. They already had like their little Seesaw account and everything where they're posting videos and they're posting their, like they have to, part of their thing is even for their homework, you record and you go through and you write in, how you're going through the problem and you explain how you did it. And so they were already doing all that stuff when they were in school.
Yeah.
And so when they came home, it was just like, yeah, keep doing that shit. Like we're going to give you your assignments and then you just do that stuff. And
see, we don't have that going on.
He's done with his homework in like, an hour, maybe two most of the time. Now my older two, it's a little bit different for them. They're in high school. Well, one's in eighth grade, the other one's in high school, but they're both going to a high school, and they're putting in a lot more work. They put them through it a lot more, but they have a lot of stuff that's online already. But they're also, I don't know what it is, but I feel like some of these administrators and teachers feel like there's this sense of, well, we have to be making them work their asses off like 10 hours a day. Otherwise, we're not doing our jobs. And it's like, well, no, like if you were doing a really good job, you should be like getting them to do like a couple of hours, maybe 3 or 4 of like that core stuff. Because if you think of all the bullshit you did when you were in school, going from one class to the other, going to PE, which, half the kids hated and half the kids loved, and then doing some of the other things that you did, and then your lunch period and all the recesses and all that kind of stuff. It's like prison, where you get yard leave for a little while and you get to come back and, all that stuff. But the waste of time that takes place in that environment should not be carried home when they're doing this stuff at home. And my kids were already doing like 3 and 4 hours of homework every night, the older two, in the first place. So it's just like, the one of them, he goes in, he checks in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're supposed to, he goes right back to sleep. And he wakes up at like 11, and then he finishes doing his stuff and everything. And I mean, he's a teenager, he's growing. And so it's, he's in that like, stay up until midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and sleep until 11. And somehow he grows 3 inches overnight or something like that. And, that shit happens, but it's been eye-opening to me. So, but what we have talked about is because my wife is a teacher and she has experience with this stuff, knows how to handle this stuff. I think going to something like that would be much more seamless now than it would have. That's one thing. I'm trying to count the blessings in this whole thing. I hate the shit out of this, but I'm going to try to find the silver lining to this disgusting rain cloud and thunderstorm cloud that's been over us for 2 months now. Yeah. But it's that's one of them that I'm kind of maybe looking forward to is if this shit goes on for too long, we're just going to be like, yeah, we're not paying y'all to put our kids through school anymore. We're just going to bring them back home. If they're going to stay home anyway, why the fuck am I paying you? We just teach them here and they can go online and learn this shit online from smarter people than y'all. Right, and we have control over it, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to finish this up because there's a fun piece of this twist. So they just tore down the expert, right? So Holcomb said his administration is doing everything it can to get through the crisis and get people back to work safely. The governor views his orders as critical towards containing the spread of the coronavirus. Yet those efforts have come at an economic cost. Tens of thousands of Hoosiers have filed unemployment claims. State tax revenues have plunged. Notice they're having Holcomb say that. Oh, he understands. Holcomb on Tuesday announced a formal agreement with 6 other Midwestern states to coordinate how the businesses would reopen. Constitution versus coronavirus. Okay, that's the end of that section. So now they've said, y'all are overreacting about some bullshit. And we've got to have Constitution versus coronavirus.
Constitution versus coronavirus is like Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. That shit's been over. Yeah. The Constitution got knocked the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly.
Corona won.
So, right, absolutely. And so now they're going to return to the people at the protest Saturday. So they've set up Holcomb as saying, we know there's struggles. We know that but we're opening things back up and all this. And yes, the Constitution matters, but you got to be safe.
It doesn't matter that much.
Right. So So that now they come back to the protesters. Here we go again. At the protest Saturday, hundreds of people stood among signs, "Don't tread on me," flags, and Trump banners as they voiced outrage. Quote, "My freedom does not end where your fear begins," read signs. "Repent, Holcomb," read one wooden cross. Repent, Holcomb. So here we got the crazy.
Somebody had to have a cross, so it sounds like they're in
Right.
the KKK or something.
Yeah, oh yeah, and they did. They had a big wooden cross out there that said "Repent, Holcomb." They were one among 1,000 different people. So one among 300 different people. Right. On the other side of the street, Richard Klaus. This is my guy. Remember, I told you we were going to return to him. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the street, Richard Klaus could barely contain his anger at the congregation. Keep in mind, this dude is walking up and down amongst these motherfuckers. He said he found the rally appalling. He spent as much time there as I did. And I was there for 2 hours. So he said, "I'm no Rush Limbaugh, so I'm absolutely sure I cannot change a single mind over there," he said. Again, this is a long quote, but I just wish we could rise to a world someday where,
Is it just me, or it's like the whole Rush Limbaugh thing? Like, isn't that from the 90s and like the early 2000s, maybe? Like,
yeah, no, but it drives this home that this is okay. Again, this guy is painting. They're using this guy to paint, and this they're saying this guy is the opposition. So they're using this long quote where he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. But all this dude did, I'm telling you, was walk back and forth going, "Y'all just love Rush Limbaugh," and he's the guy that me and Mark Rutherford broke. So he continues, "But I just wish we could rise to a world someday where people could think better for themselves and make more educated decisions, maybe based on science or factual information." So remember, we got all these retards with crosses and saying one-liners and being dumb, but the opposition, they get themselves a whole paragraph to talk about how stupid we were. So, the growing trend of protests. The protest mirrors several others held across the country in the past week in states both Democratic and Republican governors. Protests in North Carolina, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Minnesota have called on their states to reopen. But the American public as a whole, bandwagon, but the American public as a whole seems to hold different perspective. So now they're going to minimize. They initially said 200 crazy people. The majority of adults worry that the state governments will lift restrictions too quickly rather than not quickly enough. According to a Pew Research poll of 4,917 residents they conducted last week, which I'm sure were urban, the majority, 73%, also believe that the worst problems from the coronavirus outbreak are yet to come. Now, I want to point out, if they asked me, the worst problems from the coronavirus outbreak, I would say September. I would say September is when we're going to really hurt, because when we're going to really hurt is when this economic bullshit starts to come in. Yeah. So I would fit their 73%, and I was at the damn thing.
Yeah, well, not only that, but like and that's the thing with like some of the ways that questions are. And I mean, you and we've done some polling and stuff like that before, and so it's to try to design polling. Sometimes it's a challenge,
right?
But this is a very lazily designed poll because there's not much nuance to it, and if you really think about so the question, what's the worst impact, or what's the question again? How does it go again?
Get into it. Question was, it says the majority, 73%, believed that the worst problems from the coronavirus outbreak are yet to come.
Worst problems from the coronavirus outbreak. Now, let me ask you this. If I said, are there problems from the coronavirus outbreak, Marcus? What's your response going to be?
Absolutely.
So you believe everything that Dr. Fauci says then?
No.
Oh, well, that doesn't fucking matter because I'm going to use that, you saying yes, absolutely,
Right.
as a basis for me me conducting my
Right.
article on how, yeah, look, 73% say. So
Right.
so we can still see the response as a bigger problem than the thing itself,
Yeah.
or at least as bad
Right.
as the thing itself.
For
And one
sure.
of those things where it's like, you know what? I'll just take my chances. You know, like if I have to wear uh, something that like chokes off my jugular vein and my windpipe and makes it to where I can't breathe and my blood starts losing I start losing circulation. I can't feel my head anymore, and I can't think, and I pass out. Well, what was that for? Well, it was a bubble to keep you protected in case someone coughed on you. Okay, well, maybe there's a better way
Right.
than
You
this
think?
bubble that chokes me half to death.
Right.
You know? And so, from a metaphorical standpoint, that's like, so if I said, now, were there problems from this virus that's going around? You'd be like, yes, there were. Like, all right, cool. I'm done with you. Like, well, no, wait. I have more to say. It doesn't matter. We don't care what you have to say. We've got our poll numbers. We're ready to go. Like, well, no. What I was going to tell you is that I don't think the thing is as big of a threat as this shit that they have around my neck that's choking me to death.
Right.
Can they loosen this up a little bit so that I don't choke to death?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The cure is worse than the disease. And that's what we're facing over and over again.
What do you hear? Have you ever asked a doctor, like pediatrician or anything? I mean, your daughter's pretty. She's 10, so you're yeah. My oldest is 11. I mean, my youngest is 11. So we, I'm just remembering back to when we were asking these questions. Hey, so tell me about this shot, this shot, this shot, this shot. Tell me about the flu shot. Tell me about these things that, you know. Oh, well, the benefits outweigh the risks.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are those risks?
You got some numbers on that, and what those risks are, and what those benefits are, and what I'm risking if I don't do it. Because it's just really like, what if I disagree, and what if my body belongs to me? What if my kid's body belongs to him?
Yeah.
And what's really, really funny about this is that, like, they will try to take your kids from you if you don't want to do this stuff. Ask those kids, because when you're the parent, because I've been on both sides of this. I've been the parent at the doctor's office with a 3-year-old while they jam that shit into their leg, going along with it, trying to calm them down, trying to get them to just stop fighting and trust us, this is good for you. I've been on that side. And thankfully, we didn't have the injuries that people have had. We didn't have the illnesses afterwards that other people have witnessed and have experienced. But I've been on that side, and I've been on the other side now, where I've now started to ask those questions. But I guarantee you this damn much. There's not a fucking kid in America or anywhere else in the fucking world who says, please tell my daddy to shut the fuck up because he doesn't know what he's talking about, and jam that shit in my leg.
Absolutely.
No, that goddamn doctor will, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's be clear. 2 points to what you said. One, yeah, I was there with Anya when they administered the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
I was also there when I watched the fire in her eyes extinguish. I was there when she had a reaction to a vaccine that we had to treat with a bunch of like kefir and other things because we watched her have a reaction. Smart enough, we were far enough down this line to recognize that she was being damaged, and we managed to prevent it. She was not able to speak until she was 5 years old. My daughter. Now, Anya, and that she's a bright little girl. She came out of it. She's good to go. But I watched that happen to my little girl.
Yeah, I've got a friend who had the same thing. His kid had like horrible kidney problems, and he had like some. I mean, spectrum of, autism kind of stuff. Really, really bright kid, but like was really, really having difficulty socially. Went from being, because like we know there are other kids, and the youngest one doesn't have those problems because they learned from that mistake.
Yep.
And he's good friends with my youngest one, but their oldest one, I think he's 16 now, and it took like 3 or 4 years worth of treatment and like basically purging the system of all that shit.
Yep, we used
him to the point where
it was hard.
Yeah, I fuck with his dad all the time. Like there's this board game that we play, and I'm like, man, he's better than you at this. That's how smart the kid is. Like the kid's he's really intelligent, but I've seen him grow. I've seen him develop from this very shy, very awkward kind of kid in an age where kids aren't like that. Like I get when kids get to like that 13, 14, 15, 16, they start going through puberty, their arms and legs get longer than the rest of their body is ready for, and they're kind of awkward and goofy, and they start getting a little self-conscious around girls and all that kind of stuff. When you're 9, 10, 11, like those are the kids that they're like buck wild, and they think they run the world. They're going through like that phase of things, and he was super subdued, and very, and he's like developed out of that, and he still has a little bit of residual issues from that. But I know what you mean. There's too many stories of people like that who've seen, like you said, the fire in their eyes extinguished because you see who they are, and the next day or within a couple of days is something different. And to have someone tell you it's a coincidence,
bullshit.
Is you want to hurt somebody. I mean, it's everything you have in you to keep you from wanting to do that stuff. And I haven't, like I said, I was fortunate enough I didn't experience that firsthand, but I've heard enough of those stories. I've seen enough of that stuff that it's, and again, back to that thing, like if Anya had her choice, is there any world in which she elects to do that against your wishes because you're stupid? No.
Yeah, that would never happen. And number two, because like I said, I have a couple of things I want to touch on. These same doctors, same office that did that, right? Now this was slightly before, but same office, same doctors. My son his name's Raven. You haven't met him, but he's 22 years old now. Okay. He is a human muscle. My son's arms are this damn big, huge. He is a human muscle. Does he have a little tummy? For sure. But he is a human muscle, just huge. But he is like 5'3". He is stubby, big old muscle, right? So we walk in to get for his freshman year to get him the paperwork done for football because he is a human muscle, right? And he wants to play football. So we take him in there. He has a little bitty belly, and I mean a little bitty belly. They told us that he was, because their little chart tells us that for his height, he weighed 200 pounds. But he is a human muscle. This dude, I'm telling you, his arms are twice the size of mine at this time. They told us he was morbidly obese, and they weren't sure if he should play football. He should be athletic because it might endanger him. He's so fat.
Yeah.
So these are the same people.
So it's funny. So I have my genes, my hereditary, like big quads, big thighs, big calves, like big legs just in general, and a lot of like muscle density just in general. And so I'm just under 6 feet, and I weigh about 220 now. I mean, am I as svelte as I used to be? No. I was about 180. I was about 180 when I got out of high school. But what's funny is, my wife pulled up probably 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. This is a little earlier on in like kind of the awakening process for her. as far as health is concerned and all that kind of stuff. Because that's like her big thing. Like she's she's much more studied and much more well versed on this stuff. And so like I kind of delved more into the political, but more so like the business and like how to find a way to navigate and make money off of things so that we can survive. She's much more. She's our nutrition, health, and like homeopathic medicine guru in the house. But back then, 4, 5, 6 years ago, however long ago that was, we were doing this thing, and at that time I was like 205, 210, something like that. And she's like, "Well, according to the BMI, you're obese." And I was like, "All right, hang on, I'm gonna show you something real quick." Pulled up a photograph of Adrian Peterson, who's a like all-pro running back for the Minnesota Vikings, and he's with the Washington Redskins now. But anyway, it's just him in like biker shorts. Okay, so he's like practically naked.
Yeah.
And it's just like ripped, like probably like 2.5% body fat, if that.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's 6'1" and he weighs like 225. Like, so according to BMI,
right,
he's obese.
Right.
So that shit doesn't mean a goddamn thing.
Right.
Like, look at and like I said, like I'm not necessarily in tip top shape. Like I don't have a six pack or anything like that.
You are in better shape than me, brother.
But I'm in okay enough shape where like I can run. I still run up the stairs at the house and everything just because I like to keep working my legs and everything. But anyway, I could probably do a little work on my upper body and stuff like that. But
I gotta say something while you're talking about running. If you see me running, run. There's a bear.
There's something coming. Okay, fair enough. No, but the point is like these are the kinds of things. These are the kind of metrics that people will use in their statistics to tell you like why. Like that's what this is just a it's an anecdotal thing. But there's this group that I'm in where there's a couple of people who are like real hardcore into like this whole COVID thing. They've been like, I don't want to out what our group is or anything like that, but it went from like one thing where it was like really studious to like another thing where it became like panic and fear, and it was all right when this stuff started to happen. It was just like all kind of crazy stuff. And what's interesting about that is that you heard about this guy that died he was from California, but he was in Disney World in Florida. He was like 34 or something like that. And they're like, oh, because what was happening was they had all these statistics going out that like this is really unduly affecting the elderly. Again, similar to the flu. Like you're compromised health. You have all these other health conditions and everything, pre-existing conditions that make you more vulnerable to something like this. So this guy, you had all these people at spring break drinking out of each other's ass cracks and stuff like that on the beach. They had like a chain. They're like human centipede, and they're literally like doing shots and drinking beer out of each other's ass cracks. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? But whatever, do your thing. If that's you don't care about E. coli or whatever the hell else, knock yourself out. You got bigger things to worry about than coronavirus. Trust me, if you're drinking out somebody's ass crack. But that's beside the point. The point was they saw young kids not taking it seriously. They didn't have control over them. So what did they do? They start hyping up the stories of us young people too. This guy's 34, didn't have any problems. Then, and they're like, oh, this 34-year-old dies of coronavirus, went to Disney World. Who knows what other people in Disney World he infected? Oh my God! Just crank the fear gears as far as you can. Well, in my group, one of the guys there says, "Hey, I just found out that one of my coworkers." That guy was one of her patients before, and turns out, he did in fact die of coronavirus, and he didn't have that many comorbidities. Comorbidities are like the other conditions that you had that could kill you.
Right.
So, do you want to know what the definition of not that many comorbidities is?
Sure.
He's obese, he had diabetes, and he was recovering from testicular cancer.
Oh, but that's just
nothing.
Yeah.
Testicular cancer, diabetes,
cancer. Just smoke a bunch of pot. You just need to smoke a bunch of pot. You just inject some pot in your balls, and you'll be just fine.
The thing is, too, like he had recovered from testicular cancer. Right. So what I'm imagining is he probably had surgery to remove a ball. May have had some radiation. I don't know if I don't think they do chemo for that. I think generally not. But he had. Either way, his it's a sign of something. It's a sign of an underlying health problem. Like you don't just get cancer. Like I don't know, man. This guy, like he ate nothing but celery all the time, and he just he did 400 push-ups a day, 3,000 sit-ups a day, and he ran 4 miles, or all around. While inside a hyperbaric chamber, and then what the hell happened? He got cancer.
Well, but this stuff happens. The thing is, it comes down to Rothbard talked about in the Ethics of Liberty. You cannot use a life wrap situation to argue for anything, because there will always be an exception. There will always be the one guy that was perfectly healthy and winds up dying or something.
Right.
That shit happens all the time.
Yeah, and well, not only that, but the fear. So what we've been subjected to is the fear of a potential harm has kicked open the doors to guaranteed harm.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, you're right. And we need and this is why we need to start coming back out and putting our voice out there, whether or not you agree, which Chad, I know you do, but whether or not people agree with whether I should have gone to this thing or not, don't threaten my life.
If your friends went to a protest saying, no, we should stay locked down until July, you would not have threatened their life.
Right.
Even though it might ruin your career.
Right.
And it might cost you everything, where you and your whole family ends up out on the street. You still wouldn't have threatened anyone's life, because that's not you. That's not who you are.
You're right.
That's not who anyone should be.
Yep. So I want to wrap this up with a commentary, and we'll just cover this briefly. And what I want to say is, all of this aside, stop being manipulated. One of the things you talked about earlier, Chad, was that they are trying, that they've set up this side and this side, and they pushed everybody to the fringes. When in all reality, the truth is likely somewhere in the middle, and also most people are somewhere in the middle. But they have made it so that this side and this side are so far apart that you can't find the middle and you can't talk. It is nothing more than another divide and conquer strategy being used by the state.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because we, and one of the things that's been really, really sad to see in all this is, this separation has kind of, it's done a few things. So one, it's like physically separated us, right? So there are certain people who you can't even go. Like we went and saw my mother-in-law today. We brought her some groceries. She lives in a retirement community that it's independent living, except that the independence went away like a month and a half ago. It's lockdown living now, but it's not assisted. She's not like under the care of a nurse or anything like that. She's in an apartment, but it's in a special elderly complex. Gated, not gated, but there's a code to get in the door. You have to you can't. Nobody can just roll up on her door and kick it in and hurt her or anything or rob her. So there's a certain security with that and everything, and she's got like her neighbors that are close by that it's been very good for her in some respects. But the reason why we're moving, the reason why the books that used to be here last week are not there is because they're in boxes back there. But we're moving, and we're moving into a new house where we're going to have an adjacent apartment where she could live with us. But we went and delivered groceries to her. Well, she doesn't come out. We don't go in. We're not allowed in. Some guys came and they brought a cart and everything. We put the groceries on the cart. But there's been that separation where you don't get to like sit down and have those conversations, where you get to really see people face to face. And I mean, we've all witnessed this, right? There's the social media interaction, then that's really, really kind of harsh and bitter sometimes, where it's mostly like flexing and people trying to like, peacock for their, they're monetizing the haters, or they're pumping up the people who they agree with, and you're in your echo chamber, and you just use the people who are outside your echo chamber to like bolster your points and win you points within your little tribe. And that's all fine. I get it. It's kind of the way of the world. But then you go to like text messaging. Text messaging still has like this level of like disconnectedness.
Yeah.
Tone of voice is lost a lot of times. You can get into a lot of really, really bitter fights and arguments just because people don't understand what you meant when you said something, or you don't understand what they meant when they said something. Then you go to phone conversations, and even then it's still not the same as even doing this. And that's one thing I'll say that's better out of this, is that now people are like, well, we got to see each other, so they're like, now we have ways to see each other when we're not face to face. We can actually do this sort of thing, because you can actually see people's facial expressions. Body language can be read. It's part of the communication process.
Yeah,
it's what we use to communicate. So when you're face to face with people, there's a level of like one-on-one compassion. You understand, I'm not here to ruin your life. I'm not here to fuck you over. And I bet if that had been possible with you and some of these friends of yours that you're talking about, they don't really want to kill you. They don't really want to hurt you. And if they had been able to talk to you face to face, you probably would have ended that exchange with a hug.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe an agree to disagree, but we're going to hug, and we're going to, we still love each other because we've always cared about each other throughout our relationship. So there's been that disconnection. But the other thing that's happened is you've had this difficulty in like actually reaching people. And that, I think, is by design. It's part of the design. Like I said last week, there's so many different objectives, strategic or otherwise, little tactics thrown in here and there to achieve these larger strategic objectives.
For sure.
Because the more they can keep us fighting with each other in this false dichotomy of left versus right, blue versus red, conservative versus liberal, or whatever you want to call it, and to pigeonhole people who don't agree with Trump as, well, they must be Obama people. Like, well, no, like you can not agree with either of those people. You can say that, one of our big things in libertarianism is none of the above always has to be a choice, because you have to have the ability. And Ayn Rand even said this, like not voting is voting in and of itself. It's an expression of your desires that you don't desire any of the choices available. Sure. And this bullshit of you have to be on this side, otherwise you're basically for the other side, or you have to be on the other side, otherwise you're basically for this side. Like, no, I'm me, and I am going to stand up for me and what I believe in. And if what I believe in is what I think is for the best of everyone, or even if it's just for the best of me, then that's between me and my God or whoever else and my conscience, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. Right. But when we start to have this thing where like now all of a sudden, the reason why that becomes so important to people is because it's not about just them. Because this system that we have has been created to make it to where it's a race to see who can blue team fuck over red team this time, or can red team fuck over blue team this time. And for all of his flaws, Scott Adams had a really good it was a Dogbert thing where Dogbert stands up and he says, he's doing a campaign. He's running for president. He says, I vow to take money from the people who voted against me and give it to the people who voted for me.
That's true.
And that's the only truth in politics.
That's for truth. Yeah, except for Goldman Sachs, who funds both sides.
Both sides. Well, I mean, it's not just. Let's be honest. It's not just Goldman Sachs. There's plenty of them. That's why they all got their small business checks.
Right.
But anyway, I just wanted to kind of wrap things up with that. So I'll let you kind of take it home.
Okay. Well, I think that the quote for this week is perfect. And this is Benjamin Franklin. It's a very simple quote. Security without liberty is called prison.
Mm-hmm.
We have been imprisoned in our own homes. And it is time for us to say, I am not a criminal and I will do whatever the fuck I want.
There you go. And yeah, you take free meals, security. Yeah, you get free meals, free home, roof over your head, bed, a bath, place to use the bathroom, food, and all that stuff. Like you start giving these things out, and it's all free and everything. I guess you can even earn a living. You can even earn a living wage. Making license plates.
Right. Exactly. I want more from my life. Yeah, I want more from my life than that.
Exactly. And I'm willing to take some risks that something bad might happen to me. And that's the other thing too is I was explaining to this is what was crazy. I had this 3-hour conversation with my mom yesterday, and the last time I talked to her and my dad, I mean, they were coming over here. They were like chastising me about masks and gloves and what am I doing to protect myself at work and what am I going to do to protect them? And why is my daughter's boyfriend over at our house playing with my boys, playing basketball with my boys and everything and all this stuff? And I'm like, it's all right. We're good. We'll be okay. Y'all don't have to come close to us. Y'all can stay in. Well, she's like, I explained like it was like having her go from drinking the Kool-Aid to drinking the beet juice overnight. And yesterday I spent 3 hours on the phone with her telling me, all these beet juice recipes when I've been giving her beet juice recipes for 3 years, and it's like, come on now. But it was really, really awesome. And what's been really cool about that is that like what I explained to her was this whole, like the way that this kind of breaks down is when you're forced into that position and you're not allowed. You feel like you're in prison. You're kind of put in this place where you've been given a choice of, do I want to risk my life to show that I don't feel like I'm risking my life? Or do you just like tuck your tail and hide and let them run roughshod over you when the thing that they're keeping you from is less of a threat than they are?
Absolutely. And again, one of the issues that I have with the particular people that threaten me is that, one, they know me. They know. There is not a question whether I'm a Trump supporter or not. You can talk to me for 5 minutes. I'll guarantee I'm not a Trump supporter in that amount of time. So, and number two, they are supposed to be peace-loving, spiritual people.
Right.
So I guess what is difficult for us as anarchists, as voluntarists, as libertarians, is we have to keep ourselves, we hold ourselves to an ethical standard that we have to adhere to. Mm-hmm. What is that others don't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to hold themselves to those standards.
Yeah, and it's hard too in the when you're faced with these situations and these choices of, well, if I don't do XYZ, then it might make it harder for us to do something that is really, really important. And so if we can just do XYZ, then maybe we'll be okay down there. And I know, look, I'll be the first to admit, like, to a certain extent, I'm nowhere near the gangster that, like, Patrick Henry or some of these, I, yeah, I stop. I don't drive full speed through those checkpoints at the border between Louisiana and Texas. I
Yeah.
know. I recognize that, like, I'm bitching out to a certain degree. I get it. I know that's no. I'm trying to be, like, completely blunt and upfront with this. Like, I recognize that I could go harder. I could be more gangster, but I recognize that the people who are there setting up that checkpoint, that in most cases, they don't even see it. They don't even understand. They know not what they are doing. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing.
Yeah.
And so I go through, because I'm living to fight it another day, because you do have to pick your battles. And there are some of these that are like, they're some of these things that are not worth dying for. And then there are other things that are. And without going too far here on YouTube, let me just say that if you come and try to shove some shit in me or my kids, and you start trying to kick down my door, it's not going to be pleasant.
Yeah. Well,
So,
to your point,
I'm not going to say yes, thank you.
right.
I'll say that much.
And to wrap up, I have to say, I think that you're in good company, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go back and read, like, one of the biggest hard asses of liberty that I have ever read or written about is Ethan Allen. If you haven't read it, I strongly suggest you read my article on Ethan Allen. I'll put it in the show notes. But Ethan Allen, when being attacked by the New York, this is before there was a United States, um, when we were still colonies, the New York colony was more or less attacking him and his people. He didn't initially, like, capitulate. He didn't. He went in and he went into court and he talked to people in New York, trying to convince them not to take his property away. And he tried to work with them. He tried to do what they could do. And when it came to a point to where they were going to take his property anyway, that was the time when he said, "All right, I tried to work your way."
Right.
So what I think, where I think we are, is we are at that point where I'm willing to go to court. I'm willing to talk. But you go to, like you said, you go to force some vaccinations, you go to then I'm going to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some lines I've drawn, and I'm not going to go any farther.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, Chad, for joining me tonight. It has been another fantastic conversation. This one's even longer than last week, but I'll tell you what.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. Worth every second. I think this was really good. And if somebody's stuck with us this long, good to go. And we covered good information. So I don't care how long these go. And I think that having you on adds so much to the content that I don't really care. I was doing an hour of just bullshitting myself. Of course, we can go to 2 hours because it's you and I bullshitting about this stuff. Right. So if you guys have liked this, please like, share, check Chad out on Twitter. Check me out on Twitter. My links are on there. I'll have Chad's link to his Twitter on there as well. And I really appreciate you checking out this channel, and stay free.